Hey everyone, this is Cyber Chat episode number 10, Cybersecurity for you and your business. Today we got my co-host Monty here from Spy Gadget Rentals. He's one of my good friends, amazing at security knowledge, background, all security related issues. And myself, I own a business in Toronto, Ontario, a market agency, and I've converted into teaching people about cybersecurity because I've found more and more people are disconnected of what cybersecurity is and how to protect themselves. So Monty, how was your week?
So it's pretty good. There seems to be a number of different things going on, definitely in the industry. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we got a few things to cover, and I managed to get through the weekend myself without any problems. So I'm glad. What about you?
It was actually funny. Over the week, I had a few friends that got compromised. Right?
Oh, really?
And this is the one thing that we're talking about is that, you know, people are kind of like, it will never happen to me. Don't worry about it. Yeah, that's cybersecurity. It's only for big businesses. Sure enough, they got compromised. One had their identity stolen at a gas station. Right? What happened was, I guess they swiped the credit card and they had a credit card reader. And sure enough, all of a sudden there was all these charges. They traced it back to a gas station. So
one gas station. Oh, okay.
Right. So there's all these things that when we talk about security, and I mean, we were talking about before the show, is I think the small business, the solo entrepreneurs, the personal security is really kind of put on the shelf, put on the back burner because it's not that important. Who's going to come after me kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And I put in a form, Mosaic Hub. I was asking about, you know, business owners. Tell me about and this is more for like small to medium sized business. Tell me about if you were going to rank security as a level of importance from 1 to 10, where would you rank it? Majority of the people that commented talked about other people, talked about other businesses. They wouldn't talk about themselves.
Oh, really?
They wouldn't say, you know what, in my opinion, security is 10, security is 1. Security is 1, it's so important because I get compromised, or 10, don't worry about it. They said, well, because of the industry, they talk in vague terms.
Oh, okay.
And this is why, go ahead.
Yeah, that sounds like a typical situation where it doesn't hit home for you until it actually hits you. You know, you're looking at it from the perspective of it's their problem. They got hacked. And
yeah, it's generalities, right? Well, it's security in the industry. It's not a big deal, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And as we've talked about before, I think what happens is I think we're missing the point with technology, of the evolution of technology becomes more a threat. And I mean, I've told people this is kind of my philosophy. Software is hackable. Being connected is vulnerable. That's it. Like you have that philosophy.
Yeah,
you put that into the business. You look at, well, what software that we have that could potentially be compromised, right? It could be hacked. Is it the operating system on the routers, the switches, whatever that may be? Is it the application we're using? Whatever. And then now we're connected. So we're connected through mobile devices. We're connected through social media marketing, YouTube, all this other things. They have cloud services that they're connected to. So now through that connection, what's your security? And people are like, oh, the company does it. So the transference of security. Oh, they look after it. But what happens when it fails, right? Now you blame the company, but you're out. Well, you know, we did our best. We only secure at 99.5%. Well, you got caught in that 0.5%. Well, sorry, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, that's insane. I think we really need to keep in mind that in a connected environment, hackers will go to extremes to figure out where the weakest links are. And again, as me and Brenda talked about on previous shows, it may be the small business. Mm-hmm. The small business could lead me to a bigger business. The church organizations are vulnerable. I read about a case where churches and such were becoming targets because they typically don't view themselves as targets. And unfortunately, they do have bank accounts. So I think there was one pastor came in and found out that $1 million or something, some astronomical amount of money was gone. And, you know, it's that could make the difference between whether or not you're going to survive as an ongoing entity or not. Right. If you wake up one morning and that much money is gone, you may have to close the doors. So we have different entities that are being looked at, you know, as far as being vulnerable and hackable, and that's what we have to contend with.
And this is the sad thing about it, is that yeah, you might have errors in emission. So you might have transferred the liability to someone else. You have errors in emission insurance. You have something along that line. But to recover from that, how long is that going to take, right? How long is that going to take? Because, I mean, if you're down, your systems are down, your PR about now your systems have got compromised, whatever that may be. Now your clients are not using your service or buying your product. So now your revenue is dropping. You're dealing with the insurance. You're trying to recover. And now it's coming from both sides. And small businesses, there's only a certain amount of time where now they start to go under.
You know, I read about some articles. I'm going to take a moment to get my articles in front of me, you guys. So I'm going to let Brandon talk while I get some information, because I want you guys to have some facts, as much as facts and figures as possible, because we're experiencing some things that are unprecedented. I think you're going to be surprised. So I'm just going to bow out for just one moment. I'm going to get this information in front of me, okay?
Perfect. Yeah, go grab that.
Okay, it'll just take a second.
Yeah, so like I was saying, when it comes to security, I think small business and larger corporations, you know, when you look at entrepreneurs, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, can't relate to security as large corporations, because what happens is the individual thinks, oh, you know, what's going to happen to me? You know, what's my compromise? And you look at, for example, WordPress. The amount of hacks that are going on WordPress right now is scary. So I think it's really important right now for us to look at security as a whole, to look at how to protect ourselves, and to look at all different areas, and not in the sense of a fear state that, oh my God, the sky is falling, but to look in the sense of, okay, how do you educate yourself properly to make sure that you have everything protected in your business to the level that you need it. So if it's your data, how you're backing up. If it's your systems, how are you securing them? If it's your building, how are you putting in locks and alarms and everything along that line? If it's, you know, you're looking at online systems, how are you protecting your website, you know, your forms, how are you looking at your social media and what's being put out on the internet? Because again, remember, if your employees are putting out slanderous material, you could be held liable as the company. And a lot of companies don't think about that. And for give you an example here, I worked with a client, right, that unknowns to them, they were doing some research and they thought they could use Google Images as part of their image strategy to post images on their blog. And I said, you know, when they told me that, I told them, no, you have to take those down. Those are other people's property. Well, what happened was, a month to 2 months later, they got a notification from a lawyer saying, you know, you've, you know, used these images without authorization. It's a $20,000 fine per image. Well, as they started to go through the images, I think they had, you know, at least 20, 30, 40 images that were potentially liable times $20,000. I mean, you can see how it adds up. Well, that affects the business, the corporation. So now what happens is now they have to, one, hire a lawyer, take the images down, see what they have to do to rectify the situation, the legal situation. Maybe it's just taking it down and that's it. But they have to do that. But now they have to go through all that hassle. And now it stops productivity on the content marketing. So now they can't market anymore. They have to find a new source of images. And now what happens is they have to go more to a reputable source like Fertolio or something and purchase images, and image like stock images. So they have to go that route. What happens is now they've got this challenge that's happening on the back end that they have to deal with. And if they're thinking about security, right, and protecting themselves, they would have done their best strategy, because you have to think of short-term and long-term reactions. So, and that's what I'm saying, you could be vulnerable. It's not just the thing that we think about as, you know, someone breaking through your computer, someone breaking the door. Even with social engineering, it's sad to see that with vishing now, VISHING, people are getting caught when someone calls them and says, hey, I'm from X and YZ company. Before we can get started, I need to validate this call. And what happens is they ask for some personal information. And as they ask for personal information, some people unknowingly, because they're busy, you know, they think it's an authoritative figure and they accept that that's who that is. They start giving that information. And it doesn't take that much information to be able to copy and recreate your identity. So it's pretty scary when you look at it. Hey, Cindy. If you have any questions, just comment on the side. And if you want to jump in, you're more than welcome. So yeah, like I was saying, like one of the scary things about this is that when you, like with companies, you're looking at like social engineering, and social engineering is so scary right now because you look at, and I was talking about this last week, is that the demographics, the age, the baby boomers, right, are ones that are getting compromised constantly because what happens, they look at authoritative figures that they're validated. I'm from X and Y Z company, you know, and we need to confirm some information. They're saying, oh, you must be from XYZ company. Sure enough, I'm going to validate this information. And they give it. And through social engineering, now they have pieces of information, right? Even in the sense of, you know, oh, we have to ask you a security question. What's your mother's maiden name?
Wow.
Anything like that. And they get it. And so what happens is they get that information, and now they can compromise your other security that might ask you, you know, some security questions. You know, what town were you born in? What's your first pet's name? And these are security questions that are on multiple platforms.
Yeah, it's interesting how we distribute just enough information on all of the particular social media platforms, and you really got to look at the aggregate amount of information, because as Brandon is pointing out, if I have just enough information on Twitter and just enough information on LinkedIn and just enough information on Facebook and a few things on YouTube, that's exactly what the hackers are doing. You know, so remember, when you, and particularly see, when you use the same password or usernames, that's what they're going to do. They're going to take that password and say, you know what, this guy's probably using this for his bank. He's probably using it for various other accounts. And more than likely, that's exactly what you guys are going to be doing. You're going to figure, oh, I'm going to save some time and effort. I'm going to use the same password and use the same username, and nobody would ever know that I'm using it across multiple platforms. Well, guess what? That's typically the default for approach that hackers are looking at. So, yeah, you have to remember, something as simple as a password is only as good as the strength of that particular password.
Exactly.
If you ask me right now what my password was for any particular account, I couldn't tell you, because it's so long. It contains all of the numbers, all of the letters, some special characters, and there is no certain sequence or anything. Just some random typing of a very long string of characters and numbers that I don't remember. So, and for every account, it's different. And you may want to consider that, because I will put together a profile as a hacker on you, and I'll get all that information from various sources. I'll put it together, and guess what? Now I have everything, everything I need.
Mm-hmm. Well, even I had a conversation last week about people's bank accounts. How what happens is a lot of companies right now, when he looks at big corporation companies like CIBC, TD Bank, and I'm talking from Canada, what they're trying to do is they're trying to build in all these bank accounts into one. So you log in your profile, and you have your checkings, you have your savings, you have investment accounts all into one. Well, as a hacker, if I can get into your account and your profile, I have access to all your financial information, everything under the sun. So what happens is, I've been telling people, if you're using banking online, so you're doing e-commerce, PayPal, you're shopping on Amazon, you need to set up a completely separate account that does that shopping, because what happens is, if they get into that account, they can go right through your bank account and all your strategies, the way the banks are set up right now. Chris is asking a question. I think individuals in business need a three-prong strategy: education, proactive offense, and buy cyber insurance. For sure, and I completely agree with that. And like he's saying, that needs to be ongoing, right? Because what happens is, as we know, and Chris probably can attest to this, like security is constantly changing, it's constantly evolving with new technology, new software, things that are coming in. So it's great that he brings up that point.
Yeah, you really can't say enough about how dynamic the world of cybersecurity is. I was reading about, for instance, General Motors, because they're we're going to have vehicles that do so much for us. The autonomous vehicle being in mass production is right around the corner. And see, everyone is trying to figure out, how do you give us as much freedom as possible with these vehicles, at the same time make them secure? And what General Motors is contemplating is eventually paying people like everyone else, paying hackers to hack into those vehicles, hack into the vehicles, hack into the website even, and try and figure out, whether or not there are any vulnerabilities. The article that I read, they wanted to use payment, paying or incentivizing hackers as a last resort, which is kind of stupid in my opinion. I thought that up front you want to go ahead and offer a bounty and say hack into my system, because I've seen other corporations tell you straight out, we got a reward out for anyone. If you can hack it, if you can compromise my system, I'll pay you something. Right. But so that's my personal feeling about incentivizing hackers. But
you've got this right now. Let me kind of address that one.
Sure.
You've got bounty programs. Facebook has it. Google has it. A lot of the bigger corporations have bounty programs where in the back end where hackers will go in and they find script problems or problems with the application, problem with that, and they'll submit them and they'll get paid a certain amount depending on how much is it like. Just actually thinking the name, 0-day attack. That's what I was thinking. If it's a 0-day attack where they don't know about it and can potentially take down the system, then sure enough, they pay big dollars for that. But if it's, just a mild, opening, hole that they could find, then they'll pay small dollars. But they pay now hackers in these bounty programs to be able to hack their systems and provide detailed information on how to resolve it. So I've seen that time and time again. And now Chris is saying, I think he's commented to you, is Internet of Things is a cyber disaster waiting to happen. I hope I am wrong. And I agree with him. I think the Internet of Things right now is one of those Pandora's boxes that we're opening up that people really don't appreciate or value, the both sides of the coin. Yes, it's amazing, the accessibility to be able to do these technology and all that great things, but the vulnerability and the risks are just equal too. Because again, like we've talked about before about, people hacking into thermostats, lighting, their people's, routers and Wi-Fi and being able to get access to their whole house. And I've seen that, and I talked about the other day when I was watching a Darknet documentary, and they were talking about how some hackers got in to I think it was over in the Middle East. They got into a nuclear power plant, and because of the transistors or the PCLs over there, they got access to them and were able to mimic the readings. So what happens is they can either shut it down or make it run too hot, but the readings on the actual gauge was showing the same. It was showing the same readings. So what happens is either one, they can overheat and make it break, or they can shut it completely down. But the people sitting there reading the gauges would say, oh, it's running fine. So I think the Internet of Things is one of those things we really, as individuals first, as in our purchasing power, we really need to ask the right questions. We need to ask the right security questions. We need to force the companies to protect, right? Encryption, security, patching, right? Updating. We need to do that as purchasers. And then the companies on their other side need to do testing, right? They need to have these real world testing labs that say, okay, hackers, go through it, see how you can compromise it before we put it out. I mean, we talked about a few weeks ago or a month ago about child monitors, how child monitors were being compromised.
Right.
And how people were hacking out with the Wi-Fi so they could hear what people were saying or doing, as well as some with video cameras, they could actually watch them.
Sure. I think it's called, you heard of Soband. We talked about Soband, I think it's called.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, just for you guys who didn't look at the previous show, I think there's a company called Soband. I have to take a look and make sure, but basically what it boils down to is, as Brandon is pointing out, you have a company with a website, and you go there and you put in an IP number or a domain name or something, and it'll tell you how many unsecured cameras there are on that particular network, what these devices are, and gives you a lot of information about the particular devices. And it's basically sounds like a white hack attempt at letting us know that we're not secure. Those Wi-Fi cameras, even businesses who have wireless cameras, who have webcams and such. It lists all of the devices that are not secure, and this information is publicly available, on their website. And I think if you pay a certain amount of money, you get access to a certain amount of information for free, just to demonstrate that these people know what they're talking about and that this is real. But if you pay a small fee, they will show you more in that information, so that you could end up looking at some very comprehensive security breaches, potential security breaches occurring at small, medium, and large companies. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this Internet of Things is a Pandora's box of issues that need to be addressed. But I think we, again, as consumers, we play a role in this. You know, I want to know that this conversation that you guys are talking about when it comes to, I don't care if it's cars that drive themselves, autonomous vehicles. I don't care if it's medical devices. Despite all the fancy bells and whistles, what are you doing to make it safe? Mm-hmm. You know, because I could be a hacker, right? I mean, I'm the owner of a company that helps you keep things safe and secure. But from the perspective of a hacker, I want to know, what do you know about your products? And if you don't answer my questions right, I'm probably going to go public and let everyone know you're not even addressing security. You're talking about convenience. You're talking about accessibility. You're talking about speed and all of these things, but you're not talking about how to protect me.
Right. And that's the thing, like we're talking about, they talk about benefits and features and, oh my God, I can do all these great things. You can, listen to the radio, you can hands-free, you can do all these great things. But,
right.
Well, if someone can hack into that and take control of the power steering, the power brakes, on that line, that doesn't matter if I can listen to my radio if I can't drive my car.
Or somebody else drives your car over a cliff. That doesn't help.
Well, I remember I posted in one of my feeds probably about 2-3 weeks ago about a Jeep they were showing on YouTube. This is the scary part you're talking about. You don't even have to, in this day and age of technology and information, have to go to a certain company. You can punch into the internet, to Google, to YouTube right now, how to compromise router, how to get into the router, how to do this. And a lot of that information is publicly available. Right? A lot of these guys are posting articles and white pages on this saying, here you go. We found this compromise. Like it was funny, I was showing a colleague of mine and I said, look, you know what? You don't understand, smart cars are very vulnerable. He goes, no, don't worry about it. I said, here, I'll show you how vulnerable they are. I punched in how to hack a Jeep. Within seconds, I had maybe 4 or 5 videos. The first video showed a guy in his living room, and they were showing the example because they were working with Jeep Wrangler, I think it was. They were working with that company saying, here is how you compromise and we're on a Wi-Fi access, and we were able to connect to your Wi-Fi in your Jeep, and we were able to see the power steering, power brakes, airbags, the radio control, everything. And we could shut it down. And the guy was another camera was a guy in the Jeep, and he was driving. And he was showing, like, he was just driving, didn't know anything about it. And they were showing that this is how easy it is to compromise, these Internet of Things. They're not saying that. And they were saying that here's what Jeep needs to do to secure it. And they said, they need to work on encryption. They need to look on data authentication. They need to work on all those platforms. But it came down to, if I could find that as a normal user, just on the Internet, if someone wants to do something malicious and hurt someone, they can find that information just as quick. So we have to look at, not to scare anybody, but we have to look at, with our purchasing dollars and what we do, how can we protect ourselves, having the mindset. And it's funny, like, how many people watching here think about personal safety? Would you go into a bad area? If we all know the bad areas in our city, would you go in there at 3 a.m. in the morning? Potentially not. That, it's just not a right area to go. But we were more likely to purchase a router, a switch, a phone, whatever, without even a second thought if we heard there's a vulnerability. We'd kind of go, okay, yeah, don't worry, it's not going to happen to me. Not even a second thought. But that's our personal security. And when it comes to personal security as well, we look at for our kids, our family, then our business and our clients. So it hits all those levels.
Yeah, just an example. See, I think we're talking about actually, a lot of this focuses on bragging rights of hackers. They want to be able to say, I compromised a major target. And speaking of major targets, I don't know if you read about this one, Brandon, but the Bank of New York houses various accounts for other banks throughout the throughout the planet, all over the planet, right? One of these banks, one of these accounts that the Bank of New York manages is for a Bangladesh bank, right? And now, yeah, see, when the story first came out, probably 3 days ago, it was just a very brief announcement, quick announcement that there was a compromised account at the Bank of New York, and it wasn't a big deal. They knew all the damages and everything, right? Now, as typically what happens is, somebody just needs to go forward and make it and minimize the story, minimize the damages, make it sound like it's not a big deal. Now the real story comes out. Now the headline, it reads, bank governor resigns after $81 million hack.
Right.
Okay. So the story changed from account at Bank of New York, which is a central bank. You guys make sure you understand that the central banks are the bankers of the world. They manage the monies that the various countries borrow from each other on a large scale basis. And when you have the central bankers, banks getting hacked, that's a trophy for a hacker. And for all we know, this could be some 15-year-old guy from Yugoslavia, Romania, not to take anything away from anybody from those countries. But the idea is this: if it's some young person who just found a vulnerability and figured out how to get $81 million out of one of the premier banking institutions on the planet, now he posts, his information online and he gets all this notoriety. As what do you think about that, Brandon?
Well, I mean, that's the one thing we look at: government agencies, banks. I mean, we hear about it constantly, that how they get compromised, right? And it's scary that we're relying on them to be secure. I remember going to my local police department just to having a conversation about cybersecurity, and they were telling me right now, currently, there are around 500, requests or files that they have on file of compromises this month alone that they can't deal with. That is just, they're that backlogged and overwhelmed. And you look at like the compromises of, you're saying, with the banks and bigger organizations, when we're saving our money, we're trusting them to be secure. And, we don't hear about all the compromises that's happened. We hear about the ones that are larger. But, I mean, they constantly, one of the things that I was talking to a Visa, support person, and I said, okay, let me ask you something. If I was going to, get my card compromised, whatever, something happened, should I call the police? They said, no, don't call the police because then it becomes public record. I said, well, why wouldn't I call the police? It's theft. No, we deal with that. And if we find it justified, we will call the police. But if not, we will reimburse you and we'll do everything. So they do that to protect their personal identity, them, their PR. But they know there's thousands of compromises through their company, weekly, daily, that are constantly going on that they just deal with. They deal with under the rug. But they don't look at it as a public issue and have the police involved and do all that. They look at it as a company issue and they want just to deal with it quickly. They're willing to pay it out, do whatever they have to do to rectify the situation so it doesn't become public knowledge. So when we were talking about public banks, right, the big banks, of course they want to, and this is what I was watching one of the documentaries. First, they want to eliminate or reduce the exposure, right, and reduce the the fear of, oh my God, this is the biggest thing. The bank's closing because someone got compromised. They didn't want to take away that fear that it was just a minor hack. We have dealt with it. But as you start to see the truth come out, it wasn't a minor hack. It was actually a larger compromise. You said $81 million was lost in the compromise. Whose $81 million was that? Which company, which country, who lost that money? And now who's going to have to pay it? Is going to have to be the Federal Reserve, for the United States. Who's going to reimburse them? And that's going to increase taxes, and it's going to have the ripple effect. But the problem with that is they reduce the education and the knowledge that consumers of the bank have, because they want to put it under the rug, keep it quiet. And that's where you see a lot of companies where they'll do that. Oh, security's not, we're not really secure. It's encrypted. But if we don't ask the hard questions, well, what's encryption? It's 120-bit. What encryption do you use? What security do you use? Do you use SSL or TLS for the lines of communication? Like, what do you do? Right? If we don't ask those hard questions and really keep them accountable, we're accountable for the issue, not the company. Because it's our product, our service, our money. our health, our wellness, our families, that can be on the line. So it's up to us to do the right things and say, you know what, every time I'm going to purchase something, or I'm going to go into a contract, or a relationship with someone, I'm going to ask the right questions. Not even just sense of growth, business strategies, non-disclosure agreements, anything along that line, but also looking at the security. And I think what happens is, and Chris was bringing this up earlier, is that we have to look at all the areas, especially now in business. I'm seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing, I'm sure Chris is seeing, security used to be this thing in the back room, and that the CEO, the chief information officer really didn't talk about. They had the security department, but now you're starting to see that person become that CSO, chief security officer. Now it's like in line with the directors, the VPs, all that, where the CEO knows directly who that person is and is working with them directly because they know that security is a major issue.
Yeah, I really can't speak to this enough, and we beat this drum to death, and we have to constantly beat it. The management structures of corporate America is changing. The chief financial officer, he's in the boardroom. The treasurer is in the boardroom. The legal counsel is in the boardroom. But the chief technology officer hasn't been the type of person that you figured would typically have a seat in the boardroom in corporate America.
Right.
And now we're finding, look, no, he has to be there because this new implementation of this additional service that we're rolling out, new product, new service, whatever strategy, corporate strategy that you're looking at nowadays, it just might affect the safety and security of millions or billions of dollars or something, customer accounts, et cetera, et cetera. Look at Ashley Madison. Look at, you name it. We talked about the hospital in Los Angeles where we have a ransomware issue and their data is being held captive. So it's important that the small businesses and medium-sized businesses take a look at what corporate America is doing. So if it's serious enough for those guys to understand that, we need to get branding into the discussions at the top levels, then that's what we need. That's what we need to do at smaller and medium-sized companies as well, because this problem it doesn't rectify itself, and we need to provide the necessary input to make it all happen. I was looking at a case with Microsoft, for instance. See, Microsoft is at the forefront of this mainly because their products are so ubiquitous. Windows is everywhere. Every PC, every laptop has an operating system on it, and more than likely it's going to be Windows. So yeah, the hackers target that first, because that is, it's easily accessible and everything. And see, Microsoft likes to make sure that everybody, their software and programs and applications are compatible and run with the Microsoft operating systems. But that makes it more vulnerable when you have to dumb down your. I really don't want to say dumb down, but you have to make it such that it is compatible with everyone else's products. And so that the hackers know that and they go after that. And Microsoft just launched the Cyber Operations Center that is a radical departure from what they were typically using. Right. The previous approach is this. We have these various subsidiaries and divisions, and each one of them is going to handle security on its own, individual basis, right? But after so long, they started to see and understand that that's a problem. See, if I don't communicate with you and you're in another division of my same company, if we don't talk about the similarities in these hack attempts and these threats, you don't know that this probably is the same person. It's probably the same group of people, and they're targeting us, and then they just spread themselves out. But if we talk, if I get you on the phone and say, look, Brandon, I just got hacked. It looked like it came from this country, this time. This is what they did. Does this footprint, this fingerprint look familiar? You're going to say, yeah, I saw that too. Let's approach it. let's put all our resources together and let's take care of this in a group effort. Sharing information basically is what it comes down to.
Well, and this is what we talked about. It's incident response, right? And it's SWOT management. So what happens is you do all your due diligence as a company from the front end, your policies, your procedures, your back end, you're supporting, you're hardening your software, you're doing all that. But when an incident happens, you have to go into SWOT mode, where you have to go and responsive. You have to deal with the situation. If you have to shut down your routers, back up your data, whatever that may be, you have to do that in the incident. And then after the incident happens, you need to have a debriefing. And the debriefing has to have white papers, and change management, but everyone has to be involved. If they're not involved, then you have a silo approach of, well, these are the marketing people, and these are, say these are marketing, these are accounting, these are the infrastructure, and they're all meeting separately, but you don't have a body of knowledge. Then what happens is the compromise that coming in with, and I point out one of the biggest compromises with companies right now is social engineering. And what happens is those compromises come in from, people's email, phone call, receptionist letting someone into the building that might not have an authorization. They just don't know. They have a false identity or badge, or they tailgate someone in. These challenges are part of the overall security breaches, right? So what happens is when these are found and SWOT is initialized, and you have an ITEL approach to have a debriefing after, then you at least can go through and say, okay, here's where the compromise, here's what we need to secure as a company, not just as a department, not as a silo, but as a whole company. We have to look at educating. This is what Chris was saying before, is this part of the education process, is now if we know there's compromise in one department, we need to compromise the rest. Right? And Monty's great. I mean, he just said he'd be right back. So thank you guys so much for coming out. I know Monty and I have been talking a little bit. If anyone wants to jump in to the open seat, come on in. If you guys have any questions like Chris did, Chris had some great comments before, post on the side. If you do /Q, I can post them up into the window as well. So you guys can come out, can see the questions, and we can answer them directly for you. But there's a lot of things that companies need to look at. And one of the things that I'm really focused on is small to medium-sized companies, and individual security is because what happens, those are the ones that are most easily compromised because, either one, they know a little bit about security, but it's not that important to them because they have to look at building their business, look at dealing with their clients, customer service, getting their product and their service ready and maintain that, where security takes a back door. And then what happens is, what we do right now, our company is, I think we have 52 websites we're unhacking this week alone. So to give you guys an idea of how many websites we get, connected to, people saying, I woke up in the morning, now I have all these pharmaceuticals on my website. I don't know what's going on. And then now we go through, and sure enough, they've been compromised because they haven't had an update policy, haven't been patching their WordPress or their website properly. Right? They may have been on shared hosting. And then we've looked at compromises, for example, with people's identity been stolen, people's brands have been stolen, their accounts have been locked out, things like that. And a lot of this is through social engineering. Give me a second here. Let Steve come in here. Hey, Steve, you able to get in?
Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
So what's your thoughts about cybersecurity and everything we've been talking about?
Well, my question for you comes from kind of a sales, specifically retail angle. Okay. How does a customer know when they walk into a store and plunk down that credit card, whether this company has 1 store, 10 stores, 10,000 stores? How do I know how good their security is?
How good their security is? So what you have to do is, first and foremost, a lot of us guys are probably really good at shopping. It's because we do the research. Yeah. Right? We're looking for reviews. We're looking for what people are saying. We're looking on how-tos. We're looking on YouTube. Then we do research on the company in the sense of, is it Best Buy? Is it Shoppers Drug Mart? Is it Home Depot? And then we do our best in a due diligence to shop at a reputable store. It's not, out of someone's, trunk in an alley. So we try to do that. And I'm just using that as a scenario example. But what we try to do is, our best example is to go into a store. And then what happens is, say, for example, you have your credit card, your debit, something along that line. What we have to do as consumers, right, and I talked about this last week, and it's good that you brought this up, is we have to watch where that card goes, right? If we have to go give it to someone at a teller, that we watch them swipe it, right, and we make sure that's going. And then we keep the receipt. We keep that validation. One thing for shopping security, if you're going to shop, get a visa with shopping protection, right? A lot of them have insurance. So what happens is if anything does happen, they'll validate that, okay, hold on, you know what, you shopped at that store, yes, it was compromised, and we will reimburse you for that compromise because we know that other people, because generally it's not one-offs.
Yeah.
Right? If there's a compromise, generally there's many people that are getting that compromise. Right? So then what happens is that one protects you, the validity of the company, you're kind of got an understanding idea that they're doing best practices. Second of all, you're protecting yourself as a person, as a shopper, that you have insurance while you're shopping.
Yeah. It seems to me banks could do a much better job of marketing.
Can you hear Steve?
Business.
Brandon?
What's that?
Can you hear Steve?
Yeah, I can hear Steve.
Okay.
Really?
All right.
Okay.
Let me share a quick short story.
Let me go out and come back and see why I can't hear him.
Okay.
I stopped in a branch of my bank last year, just something trivial like buying a money order or something like that. And I got engaged in a conversation with a woman in a cubicle near the door. And first of all, I was blown away by the customer service. And one of those rare times where I sent a letter or made a phone call or sent an email praising this woman's skills, because I appreciate that, having been in the business for a long time. But she hooked me up with a separate adjunct credit card, if you will. It was more like a prepaid type card I had to transfer funds into, primarily solely for online shopping. She'd asked me, did I use Amazon a lot or this and that? And I'm a pretty savvy guy tech-wise, but I had never heard of this before. And more recently, they sent me a new card with the chip built in, which again is, slowly being rolled out by banks and whatnot. But it seemed, and my thought was, well, if I don't know about it, boy, there's millions of other people out there that are just, blissfully unaware of this as well. And I don't want to point a finger. I don't want to say I blame the banks, but it seems to me that banks could do a better job of informing their customers. They all want to dazzle you with all the stuff they offer you. Open an account, get a toaster. Yeah. I just dated myself badly there. But,
yeah.
But
not really. I got a toaster. I got a toaster right here. I'm not gonna say it came from a bank.
Speaking of toasters, let me ask you guys one more thing. Speaking of toasters, I've read for months, I've seen this term online, the Internet of Things.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I went, well, what the hell does that mean? And my impression means I know they have refrigerators with an Ethernet port, I guess, for crying out loud, or Wi-Fi, or both. Your freaking coffee maker can be on the internet. Or now Amazon has this, Echo thing or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's Echo. That's right.
From what you guys do for a living, that's got to be a gigantic opportunity from a security standpoint. Am I correct?
Oh, sure.
It's an opportunity.
Like,
it's an opportunity in the sense of and this is what I talk about, is the education to help people secure. Because if the company's not going to do it, and like you said, the Internet of Things is basically anything that has an IP address or some way of connecting to the internet. So it's Wi-Fi hardware.
Printers are another good example, I guess.
Printers. Well, yeah, printers. You got smart TVs. Right? A lot of people have that now. We have these smart TVs where you can watch Netflix and YouTube and Skype all through it. But this is
Can you see the USB port down here?
It's coming. It's coming. It'll tell you how hot your coffee is.
I'm afraid you're right. Yeah.
And then if you need a refill, because it'll tell you the weight too, right? These are the things that are coming. I mean, we look at movies, the futuristic movies that, and one example was, look at Star Trek. Star Trek, when they had these quarters that they opened up and they spoke. Yeah. And they have these little devices, they're walking around, these pads, and they're looking at readings and all that. Well, yeah, we had flip phones years and years ago. We have iPads now. Yeah. Like we're talking in real situation. It was evolved. The technology's evolved to that point. So what we have to look at, like you said, and I'm going to talk about two things. One, I'm going to address that thing with the bank. One of the things that the banks and the challenge that they have right now is they're looking at accessibility. Because you want to bank online, you want to bank on your phone, you want to do that, I'm going to put all your accounts and everything into one central storage. So what happens is when you log in, you have access to everything under the sun. your credit card, your savings, your checking, your investments, all under one umbrella. Well, we talked about that. If you're doing online banking and Amazon gets compromised, PayPal gets compromised, your account does, they have direct access now into your accounts. So what happens is they get your access to your accounts, and then it's just this piggyback approach now where they're in now, and now they can wipe you clean. So you did the right thing, and then we talked about is having something separate for online shopping.
Right. Yeah.
And even making sure that credit card, pay as you go, is completely separate, completely different login, completely different from your day-to-day accounts. Right? That's one thing. And then when we're talking about the Internet of Things, we talked about this is that the Internet of Things for us, for Monty and myself, it's one of those big umbrellas, big balloons that are coming up. We're not, and I mean, this is me personally, I'm not looking at this as a cash cow that I'm going to take advantage of people. I'm looking at this is a problem. Right? It's a problem that, every company right now that's coming out with these great devices, it's not really addressing front and foremost that it's like, we deal this great thing. Here's the features, here's the benefits, and also here's the security we've looked at.
Exactly. Right? Every new solution creates a new problem.
Right. When companies start saying that, there's no need for Monty and I to talk about it. But
that's when you both go to the beach.
There you go. When we retire. But
all right, gentlemen. I got to get going. I got a hospital appointment at the VA. I appreciate your time and expertise.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Good seeing you, Steve.
Have a great day. I'm going to follow you both.
You. Great. Thank you. All right. Yeah.
Right. And this is the great thing. Like, you're looking at the people that are jumping into security right now, the understanding of it, right? It's growing and it's growing that, Steve's a VA and he, the information that he has and his technical knowledge, but he understands that there's a security issue right now. He's doing the things that he needs to do, which is great. And I think we need to, as we do this, as we build out, talk about this more, get the conversation going where more people are putting their hand up saying, yes, I do that. Yes, it's a concern for me. And you know what? I'm okay because I've done the things the due diligence that I need to do. And then you're saying in the chat, security vulnerabilities found in backup generators, air conditioners, and thermostats. So you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because these weren't really the traditional Internet of Things that you typically think about. See, when we talk about the Internet of Things, we typically look at a device that's intentionally made to connect to the internet and give us all those conveniences that are touted when the product is made or introduced. But they're finding out now that there's a number of different appliances, air conditioners, etc., that were networked, but no one knew that they were accessible by hackers or anybody else outside the company. Company's particular space. So yeah, when it comes to anything where you can get a firmware update to keep it running or some other requirement causing it to be online and accessible. Sometimes you call tech support and they say, oh yeah, we can remote in and help you diagnose and troubleshoot this device, right? Well, that may not have been a typical Internet of Things type of device or appliance to begin with, but it just so happens that it is connected to a network. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, we're finding that old school air conditioners, generators and such, and Brandon talked about the generator where someone just wanted to prove that it was vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So, take a look at if you run a business, for instance, small, medium, or large, look at the air conditioners and the generators and the thermostats and see, are they actually connected to anything at all? Mm-hmm. And if they are connected to anything, you better try to figure out whether or not it's actually secure, because that's what we're up against right now. Anything that's remotely connected can be accessed typically, mm-hmm. and it's going to be a problem. Now, as far as the banking situation is concerned, I just want to say real quick that we're looking at a situation where you can do a little bit more. We can do a little bit more as far as securing our transactions and make absolutely sure that you take advantage of these payment services where you're not giving out so much information. We talk about tokenization with the Apple Pays, and we talk about cryptocurrencies, maybe a Bitcoin or something like that. Whatever it is, if it's passing just a dollar amount back and forth, not so much your social security number and name and address and all of that, then it probably is going to give the hackers less information as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. Now, before we got about 10 more minutes. If anyone else has any questions, comment on the right. Again, it's /Q. If you want, tweet this out as well that we're here. We're going to be here for another 10 minutes. One of the things I think I want to finish off with, Monty, what is one thing, and I'll add this for myself. Next week, we're going to talk about ransomware. I don't think there's a big topic that we need to talk about. But what's one thing that you would want to just final off at that someone has to deal with this week that they should look at?
See, if there's one thing to look at this week, probably your credit card transactions. See if you can get, because if you shop online, a lot of my customers do that. They shop online and they have a dedicated credit card just for the internet. That means it has a certain dollar amount on it. That means if it gets hacked, the $200, $400, $500, $600, whatever that's on that card is the only thing you lose. So you may want to take a look at getting a certain credit card with a certain amount on it, and you use that for the internet. And once that amount is exhausted, then you can recharge it or reload it. But I think that can help a lot. And I learned that from my customers when they told me I got a certain debit card and it has a certain dollar amount on it, and that's what I use for the internet.
One thing I want to add, and that was a great point. One thing I want to add before we finish off is patch management. I want you guys as homework to go through all your devices, be it your computer, your smart TV, your router, all the devices right across the board. And what I want you to do is let me know and you don't have to let me know. Let me correct that. Write down what the device is and when's the last time it's updated and when it should be updated. Right? And that what I want you to do is follow up with that process, because what happens is we have so many devices that have an operating system that are connected to the Internet of Things, that are connected to your internet, connected to your router. And then, don't leave any technology. If your router, your modem needs to be updated, put that on the list. So, go right through your whole network from your modem to your computer, to your laptop, to your iPad, Samsung device, your TV, your thermostat, everything. Write down that device. When was it last updated and when does it need to be updated? And when you see ones that haven't been updated in a while, and now let's get a benchmark of 30 days, then you start to need to have to contact the company, because security issues are ongoing. And if you're not patching those devices on an ongoing basis, it's leaving you vulnerable. And you have to talk to the company and saying, well, when's the last time this has been updated? What's the security policy? And you'll start to see ones you start to highlight that are kind of like, oh my God, like I didn't realize since I've done this list that my TV hasn't been updated, my refrigerator, my thermostat, and then you have to look at, okay, how do you update it? And for us as security professionals, that helps you be more secure. So when we have maybe a consultation with someone and say, what are you looking at securing from your personal to your business, and they have a patch management schedule, that's amazing, because then they're ahead of the game. They're keeping their devices and everything secure.
Very good. I think it's important to know that, a lot of, also what they're finding out, guys, is real quick, when you get things from the store, they're not always updated. They're sitting on the shelves. They're sitting in the warehouses. And so they can't be kept up to date. So yeah, Brandon's right on point. The patches, the updates, maybe they're 2 years behind. Who knows? So you go through those devices and check them out.
Most people, not all, but most people that just kind of get things out of the box and set them up, don't look at the manufacture date. Because sometimes, like you said, it's manufactured in China. It's gone over the States. It's gone over here. It's gone to this warehouse. And then from that warehouse, it's distributed to the local retail stores. Well, that could be 6 months to 1 year. Well, in that time, the OS, the patches, all might have been gone out. So you get this device, you're like, woohoo, I got this new device. But technically, the OS and the patching is outdated by the time it gets into your hand.
It could be a year. It could be who knows how long. So that's an immediate security risk right out of the store.
Right.
And somebody should be held responsible. We really should be getting on the phone saying, look, I just discovered that this device that you sold me is vulnerable. The firmware hasn't been updated in a long time. We really should be complaining. But I think we're being complacent, really, you guys. Come on.
Well, the complaint, I would say, to support the companies, in their setup manual, they should have instructions that before you connect your device, update the device. Right? Because again, we all know there's manufacturers and shipping and all that. Before you connect it to your network, make sure you connect it and you update it prior to it. If you don't, and then have there's one of those warnings. Your device can be vulnerable to compromise, to hacks and all that, to let people know the seriousness. If we do that as a companies, as security professionals, at least it helps to secure, because we have to be accountable as well. I mean, we can't just put all the responsibility back on companies as well. It has to be this.
Let me ask you a question. What about if the device itself, once it's plugged in, it does a check, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the device does a check to see whether or not it's up to date, what if it warns you? If you proceed from this point using this product, your network could be compromised, right? What about a warning that said, that told you?
Oh, for sure. I agree with. There should be like a manual, like a step-by-step guide of how to set it up. Then there should be a warning when you do it. For sure, the due diligence, and that's on the company side, that they have splash screens or warning messages that you can't go past this stage. And the point of having the security so strict that it doesn't go past the stage until it's updated. It won't let you go to the next screen. I mean, that's a great, implementation from a company. If they can do that, because then it secures their clients.
Okay,
right?
so that's what I want you guys to do. Go to their Facebook page and tell them, look, I want a splash screen, not that tells me to get the next upgrade or pay additional money for something, whatever, but just to make sure that I can't set this thing up unless I accept the responsibility of using the device that hasn't been updated.
And exactly, I mean, that's the important thing, is that the companies, of us as purchasers, go to these companies and say, hey, we want this before we purchase. Yeah. More people are going to start to kind of jump on the bandwagon, and hopefully it'll go a little viral. And then what happens, companies will have to make that decision. And through our purchasing, you're going to see competition, where the company that understands the security is going to start to implement, and this company is going to start to lose sales. So they're going to piggyback or leapfrog back up to say, yes, we're doing security. Yes, we've implemented this. And if they don't, they lose their market share.
And that's exactly what happens in the marketplace. If my company is doing a better job than your company and the word gets out, guess what? Well, I'm going to get more business. So yeah, if we can make those distinctions and use gamification on them, okay, instead of having to use against on us as employees or something, let's use it for the industry. We will incentivize the ones that are being responsible, and the ones that are not being responsible, those are the ones that are going to lose sales.
Exactly. No, I agree. So anyone else have any last questions before Monty and me take off? It's coming up 11 o'clock. Like I said, next week, Monty and myself are going to talk about ransomware, which is really important in this day and age. A lot of people are getting caught up in it and don't really know what it is and how to protect themselves for it. So next week, that's what we're going to be focused on, is ransomware. So if anyone has any questions just before we head off, again, if you guys have any questions for Monty, make sure you follow him. Monty's an expert when it comes to spy gadget rentals and security as well. He has some great knowledge and expertise. So if you ever want to ask him any questions, make sure you tweet him or comment on below on the right-hand side. Also for myself, make sure you follow me. We do this every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Make sure you tell your family and friends, because, again, this is something that's important to have everyone involved.
So I appreciate you guys giving me the time to provide some input, and we'll see if we can constantly come up with fresh content and current information about what it means to be safe and secure. Because look, we live in a world where we're all connected together. We like to share information, as Steve pointed out when he came into the conversation. We need to talk about how we use credit cards. We need to talk about our knowledge of the banking system in terms of security and how safe it is. And until we start having these conversations, then we don't get to share the things that I've learned, the things that you've learned, and things that we can do on a daily basis. Okay. So
awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming out. Make sure you subscribe again. And next Tuesday, 10 a.m., same time, same bat channel.
Cool.